Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and snow season is officially here in my book, which means I've seen my first movie premiere. I saw the TGR premiere of Stoke the Fire this weekend, and that was an awesome primer to get me ready for the rest of the movies I'm going to be seeing leading up to the snow. The one thing that's different about this preseason is the lack of early magazines. I did get the Free Skier Buyer's Guide, and I will see the new Ski Journal this week, but it really feels like there's been a void in the magazine space, but that's changing. Right now I see two groups filling that void. If you haven't been following Slush the magazine on Instagram, you're missing out on the best snowboard content out there in bite-sized pieces. And Pat Bridges and his crew at Slush, they have a print magazine coming out, and I can't wait to see it, and based on Pat's history and the history of everybody that he's working with, it is definitely going to be worthy of your subscription. Another magazine that is already out and killing it is the legacy title that Mike Rogie brought back from the dead, Mountain Gazette. This is like a coffee table magazine. It's bigger than almost anything, which gives it the ability to showcase some amazing images, and the words are just as impressive. Another one worthy of your subscription. And while I'm talking about things I like, things that get me excited, I have to mention my Traeger grill, which I use almost every day. If you don't have a smoker from Traeger, go to one of your friends' house who has one. Put your friend's meat in your mouth, and then you're going to understand why a Traeger is life-changing. The flavor is amazing. The final thank you I have is to NemaBrand.com. They send me vitamins that give me so much energy that I've lost 40 pounds since I started taking them. And it's not all the vitamins. I also exercise a shit ton, which is something that we should all be doing right now while we get ready for the season, because I've found out the hard way too many times that it sucks to start things out at Seattle's ski and snowboard paradise, the summit at Snoqualmie, sucking wind all day. So you're going to want to be in shape, and everybody should get a pass at the summit at Snoqualmie if they're in Seattle. You see what I did there? Well, something else that I've been known to do is talk a little bit about religion on the podcast. I make fun of myself with stereotypical Jewish jokes that I think are funny. Unfortunately, some of my fellow chosen people really despise this about me, and they let me know about it. They email in with not so nice things to say, and they block me, which sucks for them, but whatever. Why am I bringing all of this up? Well, I'll tell you. For the first time ever, at least ever that I can remember, I have a guest who's invented a religion. Does that make him God? No, not at all. What it makes him is the creative force known as an artist. And Corey Smith's Church of Quantum Interconnectedness is just one of the many creative outlets that makes Corey the unique dude that he is. And while you may not be a follower of his quasi-religion, you should be following his shape-changing Spring Break Snowboard brand. Before I attempt to extract information from Corey, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, tell a friend, regardless of their religion, to listen to the podcast, and finally, please support the brands that make this show happen. I only work with the best, and they are Dragon, Stanley, Alpine Vans, Elon Skis, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk to Corey Smith. So I guess I'll start this off with the Church of Quantum Interconnectedness. And this is a religion that you've created based on an art piece that you created called the Personal Pyramid. And I'm confused by even saying that. What is your religion all about?
So I started the Church of Quantum Interconnectedness in 2010 down in Los Angeles. And basically it's an ongoing performance art piece in the form of a fictional religion, I guess, with the goal to kind of subvert and satire actual religion.
So it's just a spoof on religion, and instead of like a Jesus, it's that personal pyramid that everybody prays to?
I mean, we have kind of like an ongoing narrative that we're developing, but basically the pyramid is the mind development pyramid. So it's kind of playing off idol worship and kind of some of like Californian 70s, 80s New Age religions.
Where does this religion inspiration come from? Did you grow up in a cult or a super religious family or something, or is it just something you find interesting?
I have been exposed to quite a bit of different religions growing up. You know, I think I was like baptized Catholic, and then different forms of Christianity within my family. And then, you know, friends that were Mormons that were trying to get me into that. And then, yeah, my mother was in a a religion in California called the Church of Divine Man. That was kind of a 80s new age, like psychic religion, loosely based on Christianity, but as modern religions do, they put their own twist on it.
Are you part of this? Like, do you live on a commune and stuff growing up at all?
No, it wasn't a totally like a communal religion, but there were communal aspects to it. But yeah, we were part of that for a while.
And I guess I'm bringing this stuff up in the beginning of the interview to paint the picture that you aren't the most normal dude. You're eclectic. You're not a cookie cutter dude that's going to be on the podcast. Like I can say, I've had a lot of people that are clean cut, jockish type people. That's not you. You're an artist and your shit is dark and fun at the same time, I feel like. Were your parents artists too, or were they more religious? Or what was your whole upbringing, family life like?
No, I mean, not really any artist. My grandpa was an engineer. My mom is a nurse. She's, been a healthcare worker for over 40 years. She's a saint. And, my father had a couple different careers. But no, I don't come from like a lineage of artists or anything like that.
Gotcha. It's something that developed. And I'm going to guess in your youth, based on just looking at you and judging you, which is, what I do, I guess, to everyone. And everybody does that to some extent. But I'm going to guess you weren't a team sports guy, but I could be wrong. Did you ever play any?
No, I was never really interested in any kind of sports like that. Team sports, not particularly.
Was it all just skateboarding when you grew up? Skateboarding and music?
Yeah, skateboarding, music, running around.
And I read in some interview that you did a long time ago about your home life, and I don't know if it's true or if you're just kidding around, but you said that your dad said it was speed, not weed. And I don't know if that's true, but when I read something like that, it makes me think that there aren't many rules at home and you can pretty much do whatever you want when you're a kid. Is that kind of your experience?
Yeah.
It was like a loose place, like you were the kid that other parents were like, no, you can't go over to Corey's house?
No, I think I was like the voice of reason compared to a lot of my friends.
Was it because your parents gave you that freedom to experiment?
Yeah, definitely.
How does that work out in school? Is it like you're only going to give respect to authority unless they earn it through you and you're just one of those kids that don't give a fuck? Or who are you as a kid?
I mean, I think that you kind of figure it out pretty quick what you can and can't do. And, obviously you have to play by some societal rules. Otherwise you end up kind of bogged down with being in trouble all the time. You had to figure it out on your own. You had to be street smart.
Were you in trouble all the time? Were you the skateboarder kid who was like the one who's looked at as like that kid's going to be smoking cigarettes at the mall? Or were you able to escape trouble?
I avoided the trouble for the most part. I mean, I experimented pretty young and a little bit here and there in high school, but that, I just realized that it was pretty difficult to get anything done if you were partying all the time or, getting in trouble all the time or not fulfilling your obligations, whether it was a job or schoolwork.
Your experience with art, does that all start in high school? Is that when you start getting into it?
Yeah, definitely.
Has it always been a mix of like sexuality, goth, drugs, and other things that make some people uncomfortable?
I mean, I think I have elements of that in some of my work, but I don't think that would be a defining adjective to describe my work.
I mean, I'm just seeing like sometimes when I scroll through your Instagram, and I mean, the stuff that really pops to me are all, the goth like photos with the makeup where it really just screams like evil and sexuality to me when I look at them, and I think they're awesome. But did it start like that? I mean, was your art always had that kind of dark element to it?
I think I always like to experiment and push the boundaries whenever I can. And I mean, if that makes people feel uncomfortable, then I think you're probably riding a pretty good line.
Yeah, I think so too. And how does that go over in high school art class? Does it scare teachers? Are they into it? Do they support what you're doing?
I mean, I think when I was in high school, I was doing like figure drawing and sculpting and much more like traditional academic art classes. I didn't really think I had like a creative voice back then, other than maybe like trying to replicate some band art or something like that. It was more just like, draw this. This is how you paint. This is how you draw. It wasn't really like a very creative environment. And I mean, I was like 16, 17. You don't really have much to say, or I didn't really have much to say at that time anyway, other than wanting to go skateboarding and, fucking around with my friends.
Yeah. And that's around the time that you start snowboarding, which is crazy because you're like a late bloomer in the snowboard world. I think you start when you're 16. How do you get into snowboarding that late?
I wasn't really exposed to snowboarding because of just the places I had lived. I was born in San Francisco, lived in LA. And then when I moved to Oregon, I think I was like 15 or 16, that was kind of the first place that snowboarding was accessible, I guess, because of Mount Hood. There's like a natural transition of if you can't skateboard in the wintertime, you want to go snowboarding. And it was pretty easy to go to Mount Hood, go to Ski Bowl, it's pretty affordable. I actually learned to snowboard in the summertime, which is kind of weird, up on Mount Hood.
And is it something that becomes a passion right away? Like, you get good pretty quick because you've been skating a lot, and then it's like, this is what I like to do?
I mean, I think like at that time, snowboarding was still in its infancy that if you skateboarded, it was going to cross over into snowboarding relatively easy or relatively fast. But yeah, I was super into it. I was obsessed with it. And I just really liked being in the mountains and kind of that contrast from skateboarding, which is, all in the city, to being up in the mountains. I was really into it.
I know you did some summers at Hood, but did you ever go as a camper, or was it only to work?
Just to work, yeah. I was never really in the income bracket to be able to afford snowboard camp.
Yeah, it's an expensive thing, but you learned in the summertime. Do you go up every summer and then eventually you're like, I'm going to get a job at camp and be able to do this every day for free?
Yeah, definitely. I worked in the rental shop at Timberline, and then, in the summertime, I got a job washing dishes and eventually working in the kitchen, and then, plethora of other menial jobs at camp that I would do so I could snowboard up there in the summertime.
Were you a Wendell's guy? Was that your spot?
I did High Cascade first, and then eventually Wendell's.
Did you live at the Arc when you were at Wendell's?
I did live at the Arc. Yeah. Probably took some years off my life.
Yeah. What's the lifestyle like back then living at the Arc? Is it just fucking utter chaos?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty gross, pretty, I don't know, maybe like a fraternity or something like that. People just getting hammered all the time.
Yep.
Breaking shit, lighting shit on fire.
Kids being kids.
Yeah. Kids being kids, like snowboard camp was pretty lawless back then. If that kind of stuff existed nowadays, they'd have like a million lawsuits and be shut down.
I mean, it's so crazy because I have a kid, and if I were going to be able to afford to send him to snowboard camp, I'd want to make sure that all that shit that I hear about that all my friends didn't happen when my kid was there. It's like you want to have your kid in a safe spot.
This was like not at the campus. This was like off campus, and everyone's like adults, but they're just I don't know. I think it was kind of like behind the scenes,
Yeah, for sure.
Like you're at Disneyland, and then like the dude in the Mickey Mouse costume like takes his mask off and starts smoking a cigarette.
Right. And while camp's where you're able to hone your skills, I think, by riding just every single day, it's also a place where you can meet every single person in the snowboard industry, I would think. And while you might not have realized that while you're a camper or while you were working at camp, was that where you met like all your friends and peers today?
I would say definitely a majority of them. Yeah. Definitely forged some lifelong friendships working up at camp. And you get to meet people from all over, and then you get to travel and go visit them, and just kind of, you just get exposed to a lot of stuff, in one kind of short period.
Yeah. I mean, is that what lays the groundwork for you moving to Tahoe at some point? Just all the people that you met through camp, and it's like, hey, we're going to move down there and just start a crew?
I had come down to Tahoe to film with like Neoproto. Like pretty much every winter I'd come down here for a month or two and post up, and I just have always really liked Tahoe. And then I didn't really move to Tahoe until 2013 or 14. It was quite a while afterwards.
But back then, weren't you in the house with Robbie Sell and that whole crew in South Lake and just kind of like the compound for Neoproto? So you just go and stay there for a few months at a time?
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, you've been riding probably 4 or 5 years at the most, I would think, because like we said, you started pretty late. Do you have aspirations of being a pro rider? Or is it just like, hey, I'm going to go and film and this is just my lifestyle and what I do?
I think at that point I did, but pretty much most of my snowboarding, I just snowboarded for myself and for the passion of it. I didn't really have any pro snowboarding aspirations because it was so unattainable. There was just like a handful of like the top guys in the world, and there wasn't really like, what would evolve into like more of an amateur snowboarding scene or just more of like a versatile snowboard scene or open-minded snowboard scene. It was like, this is what a pro does. This is what a pro looks like. It's pretty like defined, and they were like rock stars, so it wasn't really something I really cared about until I actually started meeting some people that were making careers out of it, that I saw that it was attainable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your Neoproto crew is the guys that really did make it attainable for the everyman in snowboarding, where you didn't have to be a super pro. It was just like you could be different and still be accepted, and you didn't have to just drop the biggest hammers ever. Did you guys feel that with like Neoproto, that it was different than everything else that was going on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that we really had it was really DIY, and we were really able to control every aspect of it. Because it was previous to that, you're either in standard, MacDog, or Whitey, and Whitey was maybe a little more attainable, but standard and MacDog, I mean, you had to be a full-on global rock star snowboarder to be in one of those movies.
Yep.
And then also having the overhead of, a 16 millimeter budget was pretty unattainable, even though we shot some 16 millimeter, but we couldn't burn like thousands of hours of film. So putting on a digital movie in snowboarding was pretty like avant-garde, I guess, at that time, or at least a quality digital movie. And I think that was because of the new digital cameras that were coming out that were such better quality than like the old like skate video cameras,
Yeah. So you guys were ahead of the game on that with digital cameras, because that's another thing that I kind of look at your career as everything that you were doing in your career. It seems like it was like 3 years ahead of the trend. And it was kind of like you can look back and you're like, oh yeah, Corey was doing that a few years back. I mean, seriously. And the funny thing is, one of the things I look at is your pants and your look. And when I first started noticing like tight pants and rocker look in snow, it was kind of your crew or the Neoproto crew. And were there people doing that before you guys? Although you're not calculatedly think I'm going to dress like this and be different, or if you were, whatever. But it seemed like you guys were doing that before anybody else was. In snow, at least. In snow.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely like pretty much a crew of rockers, There wasn't really like, the snow gangster vibe wasn't really too prevalent. I mean, a couple dudes were doing that, but we were definitely more like into going to Portland and seeing rock shows and going to LA and mixing it up. And that was kind of the scene we were in. So it probably reflected in our fashion sense, I suppose. But it was also just like kind of some of the snowboard we were doing too. It was like, why are we wearing like goggles and fucking snowboard outerwear to like hit this handrail when it's like 70 degrees out in Truckee,
Yeah, yeah.
It just kind of all reflected itself, I suppose.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, it was all big baggy pants, it seemed like, for most people. And then it was your crew that was totally different. And then you fast forward like 3-4 years, and it's like the whole industry is kind of going that route. And looking at some of your parts and just you riding, it looks like you could have come straight out of the bar and strapped in a snowboard and then just hit your handrail or done your big rock ride, and then you're done.
I think that's what was happening, pretty much. And then a lot of us were still pretty actively skating and stuff like that too. So it was kind of one big party, I guess.
And did you guys know that you were onto something special with what you were creating that was going to be different than everything else in snowboarding? Or are you guys just stoked to be filming for a project?
I think that we were really motivated and really passionate about it. And I don't really think that we were doing it for any other reason than that. I think that we were just trying to experiment and trying to make snowboarding look how we want it to look, because I guess we didn't think it was being presented that way at the time.
With your part in the opening movie, I think you closed out that first movie. There's a lot of tranny finding, bomb drops, rock riding, all kinds of things that you hadn't seen too much in snowboard videos before. How did the snowboard community receive it? Were they like really stoked on it, or were they confused? How did that go?
I think like definitely like some shit talkers, that was like the time when people were like, that's not real snowboarding. And, that was kind of like the mentality of a lot of the prevalent people in the industry. But it definitely set my career in motion, and really fortunate to have that time.
Yeah, it differentiated you and what you were doing than anybody else, because it seemed like at the time, like you said, big snowboarding was all about hammers and progression is what everybody was talking about. And they didn't really understand what you were doing was ahead of its time almost, like I've said, and I'll probably say like 10 more times here. But the internet is blowing up in snowboarding and the world at that point too. And there's message boards, and I would think you'd get crushed on them because people didn't understand what you were doing. Did you ever take the bait when people would talk shit on what you were doing and kind of get in heated online debates?
I think I did at first, like I'd get trolled and I'd like freak out. And then after a while, you just realize that people just have the opportunity to talk shit without any repercussions because they're behind a keyboard, and that you don't really need to engage them. Like, what are they doing with their life?
I mean, they're just trying to piss you off and get a reaction.
Yeah. I think I figured it out pretty quick not to respond to that kind of stuff. But, sometimes you get sucked in, you get your feelings hurt, and you want to like tell someone to go fuck off.
Right.
It's really not worth it.
And usually they're pretty good at talking shit, the trolls, for some reason. So they can just always make it worse.
Yeah, I know.
And I've heard that you're kind of like two different people. Like you can be the let's party, have a good time guy who'll give people shit all in good fun. But you're also an artist dude who fits the stereotype of being very sensitive in situations like that. Is that an accurate depiction of you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be a thoughtful, good person.
I mean, everyone says, I talk to a lot of people about you, and that's the first thing anybody would say is how nice, kind, caring, thoughtful, all these things about you that If you just look at a picture of you, you might not think that right away, but everyone says that before they say anything about you. It's pretty awesome as everybody just says what a great dude you are.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, because it sucks. People are like, that guy's a dick, and I said that to you, but no one said that.
Well, that's good.
But when you read stuff about your art and people critique your art and don't like what you're doing there, does that shit bother you as well?
No, not really. Not anymore. I think 15, 20 years ago, it probably did when I was starting off, and I was probably insecure in what I was doing. But, after a while, you kind of get enough things under your belt to where you kind of just get your armor up, and it doesn't really matter, And I mean, if it was like a peer that was talking shit to me, or if it was, someone who I really respected, then I might take it personally. But if it's just some dude that's not doing anything remarkable with his life talking shit to me, I'm not going to respond to it or really get bent out of shape.
Now it's time for a sponsor break, and it's back to snow season, which means if you're a skier, it's time to think about new skis. And last season was the least travel and the most fun I've had on snow in years. And I credit it all to my Elan Ripsticks 106 that I use as my everyday ski here in the Northwest. It was the perfect blend of float and power in a ski, and it was the first time in a long time that I felt the product actually made me a better skier. I could see and feel a difference in my skiing. This season, I'm adding the award-winning Ripstick Black 96 edition to my quiver, and I'm really going to be able to carve up the mountain on the hard days. And I'll tell you all about them once the snow flies. When you're looking for skis this winter, make sure you check out Elan. They've been hand-making skis for over 75 years, and they've been achieving a cult status here in the US over the past few years because of the quality, the technology, and most importantly, they're a fun, lively ski that'll make you better at any level. To find out more about the skis, head on over to elanskis.com. Next, it's time to talk goggles, and I like to have the best in the business on my face, which is why I teamed up with Dragon. Not only are the goggles the best looking on the market, they're also packed with technology. Everything starts with Dragon's patented LumaLens that improves depth perception, reduces eye fatigue, and delivers superior color vividness. There are so many lenses to choose from that are faster to change and more secure than ever thanks to Dragon's proven SwiftLock technology system. I could go on and on about Dragon's best-in-class over-the-glass compatibility or the armored venting for easy snow removal, but the most important thing I need to tell you about Dragon is the discount that you're going to get for listening to the podcast. When you head on over to dragonalliance.com, go shopping, and when you check out, you're going to enter the code POWEL15, that's all one word, and you're going to get 15% off your entire order, and you're going to see better than you ever have on the mountain. My final sponsor is a place you can get most of my sponsors' products, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and they are always giving something away. This week, it's something I wear almost every day. Peter Glenn is giving away 2 pairs of 686's incredible anything or everywhere pants that will keep you comfortable and stylish this winter. 2 lucky winners will receive their choice of an anything cargo pant or an everywhere pant from 686. Enjoy these durable, flexible, anytime, anywhere pants from 686 and Peter Glenn. Entry is easy. Head on over to Peter Glenn Sports on Instagram and follow the directions on their giveaway post, which will include following Peter Glenn Sports and 686 on Instagram, liking the 686 giveaway post, and tagging 2 friends in the comments that would look great in these pants. The winner will be selected on Friday, October 8th, and remember, only 1 entry per person. Good luck. Peter Glenn will price match that, so support the brand that supports someone making content for you, and head on over to peterglenn.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Back to your snowboarding life. You need to make money to be able to live. And when do you start making money from riding your snowboard?
I mean, I was getting travel budget and kind of like small support before the Neoproto video. Early 2000s, I had like some small parts in like some Tech9 videos and kind of trying to go on magazine trips and stuff like that with Transworld and Snowboarder. So I did have some small support, but then once that Neoproto video came out, it really changed things for me as far as being able to support myself and kind of make all my snowboarding dreams come true, I guess.
You have a long history with Capita, but I think that started in the middle of the first Neoproto video or in the beginning of it. Who'd you ride for before Capita?
I was just kind of going through boards, like just seeing who would support me. I had a friend just basically tell me, like, don't ride anyone's boards unless they're paying you. Just, like, get as many boards as possible from every single company. And that's kind of just what I was doing. I think I was riding some option boards for a while. I was riding some Atlantis boards for a while. I was riding some M3 boards for a while. I think I was riding some K2 boards for a minute. Went on, like, a couple K2 trips. And then I started riding for Capita.
K2 is funny for me because it seems like the big brands that might dabble in skiing would be like the last brand that you would ever want to be on, just based on your personality and your image.
Yeah, I mean, I just was kind of like whatever, at that point I was not like stoked on it by any means, but if you're running through 10 snowboards a year, you got to get snowboards from wherever you can and see whatever opportunities present themselves. And I think you kind of got to be out for yourself, unfortunately.
So at that point, like early 2000s, you're getting travel budget. Are you making money via your art, or are you working odd jobs, or how are you making ends meet?
Man, I was always good at keeping my overhead like so low. Like I think I lived in like a house in Portland that like me and 3 roommates paid like collectively like $500 a month for.
Okay.
So I just was like always running lean and mean. And, I would work at like a nightclub, or I worked at a skate shop for a while, worked at snowboard camp. I did like some commercial painting. I did all kinds of stuff to kind of keep it going until I was able to just focus on snowboarding and have enough income to just do that.
The beginning of that is maybe 2004 is when you get on Capita.
Yeah.
Were you around the brand from pretty much day one, though? Like when Blue and Jason were developing the brand, were you in conversations or like around those dudes, even though you weren't sponsored by them?
I didn't really know them personally. I worked at Cal's Pharmacy in Portland, which is a really dope skate shop that used to carry snowboards. And when Capita dropped, I remember just being like, this is fucking the best brand that's ever happened in snowboarding. So I was kind of familiar with it, from that first year. I mean, they made such an impact. That first year was so different. And then just kind of like through friends, Chanino Copain, Chris Coyle, just kind of a few friends that I worked with at Snowboard Camp, really kind of hooked me up with Blue and kind of made that connection happen. So I'm really fortunate to have friends that can look out for you. But yeah, that was really serendipitous. And I was like, oh my God. And once I rode the boards, I was like, this is what I want to ride.
The brand itself, it's always been Snowboarder owned and operated, which is different than most brands, I would think, in snowboarding. But it's also gotten so big compared to what it was over the past 20 years. You've been with them for so long. Can you pinpoint when it felt like it graduated from a small core brand to a big core brand? And does that change things?
Trying to think. They kind of had like the super team there for a minute, like right after I kind of stopped snowboarding and had moved to LA, and they had like Breezy and kind of like that super team.
Yep.
And I kind of felt like that was when they're like, oh, okay, this isn't underground anymore. This is like the real deal.
So when that happened, you've already gone to LA at that point. You've escaped Portland, and you're still with the brand, though, and doing art every year, right?
Yeah, I'm still contributing, helping them with some graphics and stuff like that. Definitely.
And from what I remember in the beginning, it was like a dark comedy of like rad slasher graphics and a core team that would die for the brand. And I can't remember anything that came out of Capita that was questionable, which is amazing. You personally are known for iconic graphics. I think the Stairmaster series, the Defenders of Awesome series, which is like the #1 selling board franchise over the past decade, which is pretty insane. Did you always have free reign with graphics? Like, hey, Corey, man, run with it and we'll print it.
I mean, I think that's one of the most incredible things about Capita is they are always down to experiment and push the limits of what's possible. They're not just churning out graphics, just because it's going to appeal to the widest audience of snowboard customers. They're always trying to make new creative stuff and push the boundaries. And yeah, it typically is free reign. Sometimes it's a little too much free reign. You got to reel it in.
Do they reel you in? And does that frustrate you when they're like, hey, we got to change this?
No, we collectively probably reel each other in. I think there's been very few times where I haven't seen eye to eye on, hey, that's probably a little bit too much. And we're going to sell like 10 snowboards if we do that.
Right. Do you get that? Because I worked at K2 for a while and I would hear that like this graphic is not the most commercial graphic out there and we need to change it. Did they say that at Capita, or is that not really said at all? It's just like, this is rad and we're doing it.
I think that, it just depends, it's always a conversation of why we're doing something and why we're not doing something. And it's very rarely, we're not doing something. I think that we probably have more creative control and get to do whatever we want more than probably any brand ever in snowboarding, except for maybe Lobster.
Okay, yeah. But as the brand's grown, there's probably things that you can't do anymore, like putting a kid with a gun on it and saying, I found my dad's gun. That probably doesn't fly anymore.
Yeah, well, I think definitely doesn't fly anymore. But, culture has also evolved and shifted, and stuff that was funny and interesting 10, 15 years ago is maybe not interesting or shocking now.
Yeah, true.
So I think you have to read the audience and read the climate.
Yep, I agree with you there. So you're known for snowboard graphics with Capita, but more importantly, you're known as a rider. And your 3 Neoproto films back then, are you involved in how you're shown in the films? Like, are you aware of your image? Are you aware that your image is going to be shaped by these parts, and you sitting with the editor being like, hey, I want to have a lot of involvement to make sure I'm me?
Yeah, I think like that was one of the best things about being involved with those movies is like Pierre Hondo and Justin Eels, like they were so much camaraderie with the writers and, trying to portray them how they are, how they want to be portrayed and make it like as real as possible. It wasn't like some dude that's like not into punk rock snowboarding to a punk rock song, or like some dude that's like not into rap snowboarding to a rap song. I kind of felt like that was kind of going on a lot at that time with like other snowboard movies. Like it was like, you can tell that these dudes didn't pick this song out,
Yeah.
So I think like with the Neoproto movies, it was really like true to like, their kind of own creative vision.
Did you ever have anything come out, any ads or anything around you that you just really didn't agree with the creative direction and it made you feel like it didn't represent you?
I don't know. I mean, there's maybe a couple things, but nothing that I'm like super embarrassed about. I mean, I think compared to most people and most people's careers, like I think I got off pretty easy without having to like those super embarrassing poster boy type situations.
Well, in the height of everything for you as a paid snowboarder, who are the brands that are supporting you?
I was riding up for Flux for a while. I had a couple pro model bindings with them. Holden was really awesome to be involved with and be a part of. See Mikey and Scott's vision come into light and really just change snowboarding outerwear.
Yeah.
And Electric was on Electric with Bozung and Robbie Sell and a handful of other people. Cole. I had a few pretty good little brands that I was riding for that I was stoked on.
So you're making some coin snowboarding? Were you able to make like $50K a year from just riding your snowboard?
Yeah, for sure. During that time too, I was selling a lot of artwork too. So I was kind of like able to kind of double down on that. It was good. When you're in your 20s, that's a great income.
Yeah, because you're selling your artwork, you're doing designs for Capita, and then you've got all these brands paying for you. Then you have all your travel paid for. And then I would think all your dinners and drinks, anything on the road's all taken care of. So there's a lot of money to put in the bank. And with money, are you one that just kind of blow it if you got it, or you invest it or keep it, or how do you do with money?
Sometimes I feel like I do okay with money, and then sometimes I feel like I'm pretty financially illiterate. But I think that you never know what's going to happen in life, so it's hard to think about the future, I guess, sometimes. But I think I've done great. I can't complain. I definitely feel like I could do better as some of my friends who like own multiple houses, but I think for myself and my career and the choices I've made, I think I've done pretty good.
Cool. Well, you mentioned Mikey, and your next project after Neoproto is Love Hate. And I would think that Mikey's a big inspiration to you, and it sounds like just the way you talked about him, that he was an inspiration to you. Who else are the writers that you really respected when you started making a name for yourself?
I mean, obviously, Scotty Whitlake was like my best bud at the time, and Robbie Sell, and, Travis Parker was really inspirational to me. We had a pretty good crew of people during that time.
And is everybody based out of Portland? Most people based out of Portland then?
That was kind of like the time when everyone decided to move to Portland. Yeah. Like every pro was like, oh, I'll go live in Portland for the summertime and then travel in the winter. So yeah, there was definitely like a really cool scene of riders and living in Portland at that time.
Okay. And with Love Hate, there are a bunch of the super pros in that movie. It's not like MacDog super pros, but there are some big names that you aren't going to get in Neoproto. And is there more pressure for you to get clips when you're filming for a movie like that with Mikey than there was with Neoproto?
I think that I was like believing my hype a lot that year.
Okay.
And I thought it was like possible to like film 2 video parts in 1 year. So I tried to film a part for Neoproto and a part for Love Hate. And I just kind of got 2 mediocre half parts in each video. I don't even know what happened. I kind of felt like I'd kind of done like a lot of the things I wanted to accomplish in snowboarding. And I couldn't really handle the pressure, I don't think.
Did you feel pressure? Like were sponsors calling and asking for shit and you like felt like you had to produce all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like personal pressure, like you want to ride at a certain level and accomplish certain things, but then, you're confined to your own ability. So I think that, you're going to be in a video with like Mark Frank Montoya, I mean, that's definitely like heavy pressure,
Yeah, for sure.
And I definitely didn't feel like I was riding anywhere close to Mark Frank Montoya. So it's a lot of pressure. Probably led to a lot of drinking during that time. It was kind of a rolling party too. So
But that's what your snowboard career was, right? Like you weren't in one of those things where you're thinking about contests and being healthy and shit. You were thinking about sending it at night and then you're going to get up and ride the next day, right? That was kind of your
Yeah.
career.
I mean, at that point, yeah. I mean, I think I graduated college. I was also going to college this whole time.
Yeah, which makes me think for what you do, because you go to art school in Portland, and for what you do, does having a college degree help you much? Does it open many doors for you?
Yeah, for sure. And I just think it exposed me to so many things that I necessarily wouldn't have been exposed to creatively and artistically. So yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile experience.
And you do that all while you're snowboarding. And it seems like when I look at your snowboard resume of like movie parts, that love-hate was like the last big part that you had. I don't know if it's because you were injured or if you were just over snowboarding or what happened. Why was there no parts moving forward?
I was trying to film for 2 video parts that year. And like I said, it just kind of didn't really work. And then I was also going to college. And then I was also, getting crazy. And then I was supposed to film for First Kiss. That was the next year, the following year's project, which was the first Capita movie. It was kind of like a loose program. We didn't really have a filmer near me. So I was kind of filming a bunch of my own stuff. And I had like a handful of stuff that probably could have been like at least a half part. But then someone like stole my video camera from my house. We had a party at my house and someone stole the video camera that had all the shots on it.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I didn't have any shots for that movie. And I was just kind of like, you know what? I've kind of done a lot of things that I really wanted to do. And do I want to keep this going for like another 5 years? Like this kind of just reach a certain point where you're like satiated with your accomplishments and it's time to move on and try different stuff.
Speaking of trying stuff, is this when you're making music in Portland and trying just about everything you can at night?
Yes. Yeah. I was doing that too. Yeah. I was playing music in that band, Death Valley. That went on for like 2 years. And, that was a pretty heavy lifestyle too.
I mean, is it full rockstar, like playing a few different shows a week?
We were playing a lot of shows. I don't think definitely wasn't full rockstar, but, we were playing a lot of shows and kind of living that whole lifestyle,
Yeah, and that's what I mean by rockstar. I'm not talking about being famous rockstar, but like up till 4 and 5 in the morning, waking up at 2 in the afternoon and then doing it all over again.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's got to be a fun life until it catches up to you and then you realize that like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this every day.
Yeah, it's definitely not sustainable, but it's good to experiment with every now and then.
Yeah. And is that the reason you moved down to LA and start working for Ambiguous? Because you just needed to get away from the rock and roll lifestyle?
Yeah, I'd lived in Portland for 10 years. I felt like I had done everything there and I had always really wanted to check out LA. The opportunity presented itself. So I moved down there to work for Ambiguous. Yeah. And then like a year later, we started Commune.
And in LA, does the party lifestyle pick back up like without snowboarding and skateboarding? Like, are you still involved in the music scene and partying and then Commune as well?
It was definitely not as bad. It was more like social, more meeting with different people, going to art shows, going to music events. I don't know. It was just different. I don't know. It was more optimistic, I suppose.
It wasn't the Portland dirtbag debauchery that you're a part of.
Yeah.
But I heard there was a different kind of debauchery where you lived in some red house and there were a ton of stories around that place.
Yeah. Yeah. The dilapidated mansion. Some friends of mine rented this place called the Red House. And it was like this 70s mansion from like, I don't know, in Los Feliz. And it had a pool and yeah, some crazy shit went down in that place.
Did you ever get in trouble for partying there?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do it, man. I definitely have had some legal issues. I think the great go-kart caper of 2002, I definitely saw the most consequences from that.
Well, I have a segment at the end of the show called Inappropriate Questions, and that comes up then. So we don't really need to talk about that now, but it will come up.
Yeah, I don't really want to air that out.
Well, someone will ask you it, and you'll decline it when they ask you. Let's see. So eventually, Ambiguous changes. It's time to move on. Commune starts, or you start with Commune. And is that just a collective of like-minded people looking for an avenue to channel their creative vision?
Yeah. Commune, it was a clothing brand that we started with Frank Delgadillo from Ambiguous and a handful of other artists and designers, and then kind of just started our own program. And it was great. It lasted for like 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, the 2 owners didn't see eye to eye and kind of just ended it. And then I think everyone else went on to start other brands. But yeah, that was a really great experience. I had a really fun time doing that brand.
It's time for my final sponsor break. And now is the time to order your Alpine van. If you don't know about Alpine, well, they're the one-stop shop to get your Sprinter van and have it customized into your dream adventure van. And they are the best. Don't believe me? Go to their website, alpinevans.com, scroll down to the Cody Townsend 50 Project van video, and see the build detail and quality for yourself. Cody could have gone with anyone for his van build, but he chose Alpine because those guys are designers and engineers who double as ski patrollers, mountain bikers, and surfers who spend way too much time in the elements with all of their toys in their vans. They can have your van fully customized in your driveway in 90 days. So head on over to Alpine Vans, check out their thoughtful quote builder, and get yourself the best holiday present ever early. My next sponsor is all about beer and drinking beer outside. And there's no better brand to work with in action sports than the 10 Barrel Brewery. And how can a beer be part of action sports, you ask? Well, they do more than most brands do. They sponsor a team of world-class skiers, skaters, and bikers. They produce movies around the team. They sponsor important events, throw their own events, whatever. You get it. And what I'm loving the most about 10 Barrel lately is their new Pilsner. It's so light, crisp, and tasty. Next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel's Pilsner, and I bet it becomes one of your new favorite beers. To find out more about all things 10 Barrel, head on over to 10barrel.com. My final sponsor this break is Stanley. You know, the brand that invented the keep things hot and cold category back in 1913. Remember what your grandpa used to drink his hot coffee out of? That's a Stanley, and using one is more important than ever. If you're still using single-use plastics, you know, bottled water, you're blowing it. Your plastic is going to end up in our oceans, and that sucks. But you can change that, and Stanley wants to help you do that. And they're going to give you 30% off your plastic-saving water bottle and anything else you order on their website. To get the deal, head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and enter the code DRINKFAST, that's all one word, all lowercase, at checkout, and you'll get 30% off. If your order is over $75, Stanley's going to send you a limited edition Powell Movement beanie to go on top of it. Those are my sponsors this round. Now, let's get back into the podcast. You're the art director there, you're the snow team guy, and you guys make a movie that's titled Black Holes and Invisible Forces Bending Time Through Particle Deformation, Creating Infinite Freedom in the Garden on the Moon. Is the idea we're just giving ourselves a creative license to do the weirdest shit we want, and the title's just the beginning of that?
Yeah, I think that we just wanted to do something really unique and different. And we collected all the footage that year and then had 5 or 6 people edit it and then kind of premiered it with like each different edit. We had like 6 flat screen TVs set up in this gallery, and then you could walk up and watch the edit with like headphones on. So it's kind of like this interactive experience.
Uh-huh.
This was like pre-internet snowboarding, so that was pretty avant-garde at the time, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. So how long does your whole LA stint last?
I was down there for like 5 or 6 years, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah. And then commune kind of dissolved, and that's when I was like, well, what am I going to do next? Well, I kind of had started Spring Break at the tail end of that.
Like January 2010?
Something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. So I just like, you know what, this is kind of dissolving. I'm going to move back to Tahoe and just kind of get back into snowboarding again and just see what happens. I think I was like, I'm going to start rolling. I'm going to become a sushi chef. You know, I had like a couple different, like, I'm going to like just become a bartender. I don't know. It was like, what's going to happen at this point? Like, am I going to change careers? You know, I don't know. You kind of go through that, I guess, sometimes. A little too much stimulation in Los Angeles, and I needed to have zero stimulation and just snowboard.
When you're there, it's like the drought of 2010 or 2011 or whenever there's a drought. You have a lot of time. You're sitting around, and you think of Spring Break, or you create Spring Break in your mind at first. And is it an art project first and foremost, like a fake snowboard brand almost?
Yeah, 100%. That's how it started. You know, we were kind of like in Grass Valley at my friend's ranch, just kind of hanging out there. Yeah, it was a total drought in Tahoe for like, you know how Tahoe does that for like, it'll do it for like a month or two where just no snow.
Yep.
And we're just kind of going out of our minds. And we're like, why is every snowboard like a twin tip snowboard? Why don't we experiment with different shapes? And then we're like, how do we do this? You know, we don't have any materials. So we're like, how can we make like a primitive snowboard, you know, and with just like primitive materials? And then it kind of just spiraled from there creatively, like just being able to do whatever we wanted. And yeah, it was like, let's create like a fake snowboard brand called Spring Break, just as like an art project. So we made all these boards. And then I think it was that actual Spring Break in Tahoe was when we got like a record snowfall. I think it was like 11 feet or something in like a week.
Yeah.
So then we got to go ride all those boards that we had made. that's where we had made that first maker video
Yep.
for Spring Break. It was during that week, and that's what solidified the name.
You have so many different shapes. A lot of them are super complex to make, especially in the beginning. They're all like one-offs, it seems like. And you're making some for riders and their riding style. But the others are purely art pieces. You can buy them, I guess, off your website, or you can buy them at galleries. Have you ever sold one of these boards to people that when you see the order come in, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that dude bought one?
I'm definitely like flattered and grateful when someone collects one. A lot of times, most of the time, they're difficult to part with. You put a lot of time and effort or creativity or even just an idea into something, and then you have to part with it. But yeah, I'm definitely like happy that people collect them, and it definitely like validates what we're doing.
Do you build a lot of these back then knowing that they were just going to go on people's walls, or were they all built to be ridden?
No, I would say most of them are just purely conceptual boards that are wall hangers. It's like when you see like a concept car or like a concept something. It might not have an engine in it, but the idea is there.
It reminds me of prior, every Tuesday they were putting out like boards with phones in it and shit like that back before people were doing weird stuff with snowboards. I don't know if you remember any of that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
They did really random stuff with snowboards and put out just like, it was a concept snowboard pretty much.
Oh, really sick? Yeah. I remember like Moro did a lot of stuff like that back in the day, like really crazy tech.
I would say prior was more like a joke to create content for the internet that would never actually be sold or anything, but they'd like embed a cell phone in your snowboard that like fully functioned and everything. And it could be like Bluetooth to your ear from your board.
Right.
So you're doing something that, like I've said before, is ahead of the game, because when you look at the snowboard industry, fast forward to 2015, 16, every brand is making powder shapes that are different. They're like kind of a nod to the old school era of snowboarding. Do you kind of feel like you were the first one doing that, and it's almost like the big brands are starting to rip you off at all?
I don't know. I think I have felt that way, but I don't really think that's like a useful way to think. But I think about that sometimes too, because people are like, oh, you guys like invented this movement and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, maybe, I think at the time there was Gentum Stick and, a handful of other brands that were doing really cool, like vintage shapes and, stuff like that. But I don't think really anyone was really trying to do like experimental shapes.
Yeah.
But I think if anything, I think that we helped like revive that movement, maybe more so than necessarily invent it. I just don't really feel comfortable saying that. But I think that there's a lot of brands that definitely, we would make something and then the next year they'd make that exact same thing and be like, oh, well, is that a coincidence? And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is not a coincidence. You're just totally ripping us off every year. And that was kind of like a bummer to see, because it was like, really, you can't think of anything on your own? Like, you want me to come think of something for you?
Right.
Just call me, dude. I'll make you something so you don't have to copy me every year.
How does that happen? Because eventually that happens with Capita, where your small kind of garage type experimental snowboard brand eventually starts working with the brand that you've always worked with, and you create production models of unique shapes and really have a real true snowboard brand in Spring Break that you can go see at a trade show and you can buy like production quality snowboards. When does that conversation happen, and whose idea was it?
Well, we had made a run of production boards in a domestic factory, which, at the time we were really fortunate to have them do it because no one else would really do it. That's how kind of like out of the box making a directional like snowboard was,
Yeah.
So we found a domestic factory to do it. And then that unfortunately didn't work out. And that was a run of this first slush slashers. And then the following year, I just kind of took that prototype to Blue and I was like, let's do a collab. Let's make this Spring Break board. And that's how it happened. Then we did. And then it was successful. And then the following year, we added a couple more shapes to it and then just kept kind of adding shapes to it and growing it ever since then.
And I'd say it's the one board line that at the trade show that you have to just go see what's going to be next, because you really just don't know, because a lot of your shapes are, no one's doing what you're doing, which is really, really cool. And it's the best of both worlds for you, I would think, because it's like you own a snowboard brand that is backed. So I would think there's not a huge risk for you, but you also still keep the art side of the one-off business where you're still making unique boards for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 15, 16, I had a really awesome studio space in Portland where I was able to make a lot of the handmade boards there as well, while still having the production boards made through Capita. But yeah, I've been super fortunate to be able to work with Capita, work with Blue, and really try experimental stuff that, hasn't been done from a manufacturing standpoint. So it's really fortunate in that regard.
Does this role keep you tied to a desk a lot more than you'd like to be?
No. I get to do a lot of hands-on R&D and a lot of experimentation. So it's not necessarily behind a desk.
Okay. And do you still have full control of the brand, or do you lose a little bit when you make the move to make production boards with Capita?
100% creative control, but I think we're limited to what we can manufacture, and then we're limited to what we can sell. We're always trying to push it. Yeah, we pretty much try to push the limits each year as far as what we can create and what we can offer for people to collect.
But I mean, with the Spring Break boards that you're producing, I would think a lot of people are riding those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Spring Break line, we have like the ultralight series, which is like kind of like the more collectible series.
Yep.
They're really limited, really high-end materials. And then we have like the slush slashers and the powder twins and the powder racers. People are definitely riding those boards.
More functional.
Yeah.
And then I guess we've been going for a little while. I'm not going to hit the donut shop, but we are going to close out with snowboarding and art. And I think you spent the whole summer shredding hood with Blaze Rosenthal, and you were the coach for one of the adult camps there. What was your motivation for going to the adults?
Well, I think my last couple of years at snowboard camp, I was coaching there when I worked at Wendell's. And then, I just been hanging out with Blaze the past couple of years, snowboarding a bunch, kind of got him back into snowboarding, which, he was one of my snowboarding heroes and mentors. So it was cool to kind of reconnect with him and get him stoked on snowboarding again, get him on a spring break board. And he just still rips so hard, which is awesome. But he was kind of bugging me. He's like, let's go work at snowboard camp. Like, I want to do this. And I was like, that is like the craziest idea. and then we were supposed to do it last summer, but the COVID happened. And he had kind of reached out to some of the people at camp that I had really lost touch with anyone that was involved with camp. So he kind of reached out and got the ball rolling with that. And then he's like, yeah, let's do adult camp. Like, we can go up to Hood and snowboard and meet cool people and, snowboard every day. And I think that one thing with adult camp is like people are there to like actually snowboard, you know, which is different than kids camp where they just kind of get shipped there because their parents are sick of them and they're rich or something.
Right.
Where the adult camp is like people pay to come there and snowboard and talk about snowboarding. And it's really cool to share the passion with people. And it's a wide range of adults. It's like, I think it's like 21 to or 18. I think it might even be 18 to like, I think we had a couple of ladies that were in their 50s and 60s.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see people from like all walks of life and all ages and backgrounds come up there and snowboard and get to ride in the summertime. But yeah, it was a really great experience. We were up there for 6 weeks.
Nice.
Snowboarding. Yeah. It's the most time I've been up there in probably 10, 15 years.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. I'm actually down here in Santa Cruz right now, hanging with Blaze, working in his studio here, doing some artwork.
Snowboarding together, collaborating on art, all kinds of stuff, I would think.
Yeah.
At this point in the show, it's time for something that I call inappropriate questions. And I get someone that you know to ask you 3 questions, and they can be anything. This time I got one of your old snowboard engineers and old Neoproto team riders, Sean Tidor, to come up with 3 questions.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I'm sure nothing's really going to ruffle your feathers, but maybe it will. And I'm going to go with question number 1 from Sean right now.
Okay.
Hey, Corey, so you've described yourself as a person who loves to indulge in the ladies. What is the wildest hookup experience you've been involved in, where you woke up the next day and you were like, did that really happen? Anyone famous?
I try not to kiss and tell, so I don't really know what to say. Sean knows all the stories. I mean, I don't really think it's anything I need to, at this point in my life, need to divulge. But, when you're living that kind of life, I guess, like crazy shit happens. So.
All right, so we will check the box of crazy shit has happened. We are not going to hear about it. Let's see if we can hear an answer for question number 2.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience where you thought the drugs are going to kill me?
All the time.
Still?
But you got to be harder than the drugs you do. So.
Is there anything that's off limits for you? Have you experimented? Because at this point in life, I would figure that if you had a problem, you'd already know about it. And it doesn't seem like you have from the research that I've found. It's kind of like you've just moved when things accelerated in that area. Is there anything that has been off limits for you, or are you open to trying everything?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of drugs that I'm not interested in ever trying or becoming involved with. I mean, I think you can look and see, what drugs people do that ruins their life, and kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the program. Like, if you make these choices, you're not going to do the things you want to do. So most drugs I stay away from because they're detrimental to people's health. They're highly addictive, and I've seen them ruin people's lives, and you definitely don't want to be involved or be around it. So,
no, they definitely ruin lives, but they are fun at some point until they start not being fun. But that's where you have to figure the line.
Exactly. And I think a lot of that is true with like addiction. I don't think it's necessarily the drug's fault. It's people that are unhappy with themselves, and then they become addicted or become caught up in drugs and ruin their life. So a lot of people need like a lot of therapy.
You just have to be careful when you're having fun.
You got to be careful when you're having fun, man. Yeah, absolutely. You want to be able to snowboard. You want to be able to make art. You want to be able to have good relationships and good friends and be motivated and get up in the morning when you need to get up in the morning. And we all have our times when we have trouble doing that. But for the most part, you got to keep things under control.
All right. Well, we will jump into his final inappropriate question, and let's see what he's got.
Okay, this one's a little up for debate, but you're famous for being one of 2 people to take the fall for the infamous go-kart incident up at Govey in the late 90s, where go-karts were stolen from the ski bowl resort and a ski camp van was burned to the ground. Can you describe that night, and how did you end up taking the blame for the whole thing?
Oh, I knew it was going to come up. The night that has haunted me for 20 years. Yeah, I was working in the kitchen, at High Cascade and snowboarding every day, and people were getting crazy at night, and someone who, I know who they are, but we won't bring it up, but yeah, someone went and liberated the go-karts from Ski Bowl, and, people were driving around on the go-karts for hours in government camp. People that worked at snowboard camp. And yeah, police came, fire trucks came. I think a van got burnt, a bunch of crazy shit happened. And me and one other lady who were locals in the government camp who lived there in the winter were kind of the only people that were identified being on the go-karts, even though there was countless people on the go-karts. But we didn't name any names. We didn't snitch. We kept our mouth shut and took the fall. They made an example out of us. And yeah, it was a very unfortunate thing. I was young and broke, and I didn't really understand the legal system, and I wasn't smart enough to get a lawyer, and I just kind of took a public defender, which is like the hugest mistake ever to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically just I had to take a plea deal, which was a bummer, and her and I both had to do a little bit of jail time and pay a bunch of fines and have a criminal record. And yeah, eventually it was all dissolved, and people were thankful that we didn't snitch anyone out and shut the whole camp down probably forever.
Yeah, really, man.
But it was a learning experience, and I think it helped me set some boundaries for the rest of my life.
Well, way to end that one on a downer, Tidor.
Yeah, Tidor loves that story. I think he talks about it every time I see him.
Well, that's pretty much the podcast. And I guess when I look at it, the cool thing about your career is that there were a bunch of different chapters. I mean, snowboarding didn't even start until you were 16 years old. So chapter 1 doesn't start till late. And then it's all like the Neoproto years as a chapter. You're making a name and kind of a different style of riding, and everybody knows you for that. And then it's your graphic design on the Defenders of Awesome series that people talk about for a decade. And then a lot of your other graphics as well that people talk about. And then when you take a break for 5 years, 6 years, and you're still in snowboarding a little bit, but you're partying, you're playing in bands, and you're doing your own shit. And then when you finally come back is when you have the biggest impact on what you're going to be remembered for in snowboarding is Spring Break, and really changing the category a bit, given you didn't invent shit. People were making weird shapes a long time ago, but people weren't experimenting like you're experimenting with these weird shapes and creating art pieces out of it. And that's really unique. And while you weren't comfortable earlier when you're saying I didn't invent this, it's kind of been around, sure, but you've taken the strange eclectic shapes and made it a whole category that people are excited about. And that's something to hang your hat on. So it's pretty cool to see from rider to designer to almost engineer what you've been able to do in snowboarding. And I thank you for your time, man.
Oh, thank you, Mark, man. That when you say it like that, it really kind of puts everything into perspective. And yeah, I'm definitely grateful and definitely humbled, and yeah, good talking to you, man. I appreciate it, man. That was really fun.
So that was time with Corey Smith, and that was a tough one. Based on interviews he's done a long time ago and through talking with his friends, I was anticipating Corey to be a talker, and he wasn't. I threw him off guard in the beginning, which he mentioned afterwards, and I think it took a little while for him to recover. I also think, in fact I know, that there are so many amazing stories around Corey outside of the art and snowboard world. But he didn't want to share, and I get it. Why bring up stuff that may be funny, but ultimately don't need to be shared? Especially when there's so much positive fun to talk about in his world. That's the podcast. Now it's time for the review of the week, and this week it's a 5-star review that comes in from Nick Stillwell of Australia, and it's titled, Boozy Puts the Nose On. Here's the review. Every time I hit play on one of Powell's podcasts, it's like a time machine back to when skiing and snowboarding was the home of ski bums, delinquents, and frontiersmen. I lived skiing and snowboard racing and teaching from the late 80s to the late 90s, with enough right place, right time to have met and ridden with a number of the cats interviewed. From MSP, MacDog, Miller, and all the others, I can close my eyes and see the clips, feel the runs, suffer the hangovers, and be amazed by the stories. Then Mike hits you with the new schoolers and the progression of the sports and the players that made and keep making the times of our lives. Don't fucking stop. Nick Stillwell. Thank you very much for that review, Nick Stillwell. It sounds like your life and times put you in a sweet spot of skiing and snowboarding if you were teaching in the late 80s through the late 90s. It's like you were there when snowboarding got big, you were there when skis got fat, and you were there when everything was really happening. So I bet I would be envious of a lot of your life and times, and I thank you a ton for that review. Please email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com with the shipping address of one of your US pals, and I will send them a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. For anybody else who wants to play this game, please put a review on iTunes, or if you do it elsewhere, email me a link at mike@thepowellmovement.com. And if I read that review on the show, send me an email with your shipping address and I'll send you out that limited edition Powell Movement beanie. If you're outside the US, like Nick was, I am too cheap to ship internationally, and the paperwork is a total pain in the ass. But if I do read your review, I'll ship a friend of yours who lives in the US a beanie. At this point, I want to thank you for listening and ask you all to buy stuff from my amazing sponsors, because I only work with the best, and they are Alpine Vans, Elon Skis, Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Dragon, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.